Hello everyone, you have come to Tata Comic Preview channel. Let read together. Have fun. Tui. A vile green glob hit the girl's head as Dan Youngzi spit on her. He then turned and looked at Li Huowang. So, what does it really say? This stone tablet records a technique to cultivate internal strength. It says here that during the time between the New Year's Eve and the New Year, it is possible to utilize several external pills and this technique to capture a portion of the spiritual energy that the heavens release into the mortal realm. We can then absorb it and use it to become immortals. Li Huowang stared at the stone tablet and uttered each word with such confidence that it seemed like all his words were the truth. It seems that there are several kinds of pills. This one requires 120 g of cinnabar, 5 g of white strychnine, 60 g of acidin, and a wandering god. Master, what kind of ingredient is a wandering god? Dan Youngzi did not reply immediately, instead observing Li Huowang for a while. You. Even that little girl could trick me. Are you also trying to do the same? Li Huowang immediately replied. Master, this is the method to become an immortal. How could I trick you? After all, I want to become an immortal too. Good. Dan Youngzi clapped and laughed happily. Then let's become immortals together, both master and disciple. Li Huowang was stunned for a moment, before continuing his facade, displaying an extremely excited expression. Is that true? Master. Can I become an immortal too? Thank you, master. Meanwhile, Dan Youngzi had been silently observing Li Huowang's expression and only nodded after he was certain that there was nothing wrong with Li Huowang. Yes. Don't worry about the pills. Now, tell me how to use the technique. When both of us have mastered it, we will proceed to refine the pills. There is still quite some time before the new year. Yes, master. Li Huowang then proceeded to teach him how to use the internal and external heavenly circulation technique that he had come up with. Li Huowang was in Dan Youngzi's room for quite a long time. He only managed to get back to his room late at night. Li Huowang happily walked down the tunnels with his lantern illuminating the path in front of him. He was satisfied with how things were going and how quickly he would be able to achieve his objective. He was delighted with this opportunity after having waited for so long. When he came to the preparation room, just as he had expected, the guiding drug ingredients inside still hadn't gone to sleep. As he walked in, all of them surrounded him, their eyes filled with happiness and excitement. Everyone knew what today's developments meant for them and Li Huowang. Li Huowang had already told them about what might happen today beforehand. Don't worry and just wait for my good news. All of you will be able to go home soon. As Li Huowang said this, everyone almost cried from happiness. They would finally be able to go home. Senior Li. I will treat you as my adoptive father. You are practically a living saint. One of them who was affected by hand, foot, and mouth disease was kneeling on the ground and kowtowing to Li Huowang with gratitude. Everyone else saw this and followed suit. Li Huowang made some effort to calm them all down. If it weren't for all of you this afternoon, then I would have been dead. Shouldn't I be the one kneeling in front of you now? All of them stood up, their faces lit up with their bright smiles. Li Huowang stared at their happy faces, feeling something warm in his heart. In this bizarre world, these malformed people were more or less his comrades. Senior Li, how was my acting? That Baldy was so stupid that he fell for my act. Puppy pounded his chest with pride. Not bad. If it weren't for you, Dan Youngzi might not have been fooled so easily. While everyone was praising him and asking questions, a certain someone was worried about him. Senior Li, are you alright? Did he hurt you? Bai Lingmiao came up to him, her eyes filled with worry. Li Huowang suddenly remembered how Dan Youngzi wanted to become an immortal with him. This would also mean that Dan Youngzi wanted Li Huowang to test the pills first. I don't need to tell her this. He has to rely on me to translate the contents of the sacred text now. Don't worry, he will never harm me. After exchanging some pleasantries, Li Huowang became serious. The first day of the month is almost over, and the wandering gods will soon return from their procession. I need your help. Did your grandfather tell you any other stories like these? He still hasn't figured out what kind of ingredients he should list to refine the fake pills. Merely cinnabar or other minerals containing mercury would not be enough to satisfy him. Li Huowang needed ingredients that were extremely toxic or vile, the worst of their kind. He still remembered just how strong Dan Yongzi was. He needed to make sure that Dan Yongzi would die this time. Upon hearing Li Huowang's question, Bai Lingmiao's eyes widened. Yes, there are quite a few more stories that my grandfather has told me. He told me not to run out of the village, otherwise, I would be captured. He told me that the people outside the village are ruthless and would strip me of my skin, forcing me to wear flayed dog skin instead. After that, they would then use us to perform on the street and fool people into thinking that the dogs are smart and can listen to orders. He also told me that the children would never be able to grow after all that because the dog skin would be fused to their body. Li Huowang shook his head. No, I meant stories that are used to scare children, something akin to the wandering gods. Wandering gods? Humph. Bai Lingmiao furrowed her brows as she tried to think back. My grandfather would tell me random stories from time to time, mostly about giant man-eating insects living within the hills. He didn't really tell me any stories similar to that of the story of the wandering gods. Who told your grandfather about the story of the wandering gods? Bai Lingmiao's eyes shone with innocence as she replied, it was his grandfather who told him. And, I will pass down the story to my grandchildren one day. Li Huowang shook his head. From the looks of it, he might need to revise his plan a little. Senior Li, I know of a story. A frail teenager suddenly spoke up. His joints were twisted abnormally, with one shoulder being higher than the other. He was propping himself up against the wall. Even within the preparation room, he was one of the more abnormal ones. Senior Li, my surname is Zhao. I'm usually called Wu at home, but you can call me Zhao Wu. Li Huowang was desperate for ideas, so he couldn't really care about who was talking. Sure, tell me about your stories. Zhao Wu looked around and whispered to Li Huowang. You wanted something vile and evil, correct? I've heard my elders tell stories of something known as Mountain Grandma. Mountain Grandma? What do they look like? Li Huowang tried to recall if he had ever seen pictures of anything like it, but nothing came to mind. In fact, he had never even heard of the term before. Shh! Senior Li, don't be too loud about it. This thing is very dangerous. I've heard that the Mountain Grandma has very keen hearing. If you keep on talking about her, she will definitely come and find you. Oh. Li Huowang was intrigued. I've heard my uncle say this before, the Mountain Grandma would appear in different forms in front of different people. Some would see her as a monster with long ears, while others would see her as an older family member that was long dead. But in all of the stories, one thing remained constant. Those who stayed with the Mountain Grandma for a certain period of time would transform into one too. Li Huowang rubbed his chin, deep in thought. What a weird world we live in. There are so many crazy things in this world. Alright, this should do. Anything else? Yeah, there's something called the companion fish. It's also very vile. Li Huowang learned many weird names from Zhao Wu. He decided that most of them would be the ingredients of the fake pills that he would use to kill Dan Yongzi. Looks like you are quite knowledgeable. Thank you. I think all these will help me a lot, said Li Huowang. If Li Huowang were to only list out poisonous ingredients, Dan Yongzi might discover his plot. But if he were to add in some of these ingredients that he might not even know about, the plan would be much more likely to succeed. He needed to use ingredients that even Dan Yongzi might not know. The more ingredients like that there were, the more likely he would think that the pills would turn him into an immortal. Hearing Li Huowang's praises, Zhao Wu chuckled. I've heard these from my uncle. He used to be a wanderer, so he traveled a lot and learned a lot about the world. All right. Thanks. It's almost time now, so I need to go back. All of you just need to wait for my news. Li Huowang took a deep breath and started walking back to his room. He had just taken 2 steps when a giant blocked him. The man was at least 1.9 m tall. I. Li Huowang recognized him. Everyone in the preparation room simply called him simpleton. He was cross-eyed and drooling. He wasn't really a simpleton, it was just that he had difficulty processing information and had a slower response rate. I know some too. Li Huowang sighed and patted his bald head before leaving.